Is our All-Ireland final. Colm, great to have you on. 4 All-Stars to your name, amongst other things. Great to have you on.
Thanks a million, lads. How are you?
Yeah, we're very well. So we're just reflecting on the weekend, as everybody is. You kind of have to start, I suppose, with the Sean O'Shea free, and everything was against him, not least the wind and the pressure of the situation, and talk about a languid style under pressure.
It was just unbelievable. Yeah, when David Clifford wins that free, I just think to myself, especially with the way that the game went with shooting into the Hill 16, I'm just thinking that shot is never on. I thought they were going to work it short, but the longer O'Shea had the ball down on the floor, you're just thinking, if there's anyone that can make this kick, it's probably him. And the fact that he made it with such distance, which was even more impressive. You know, it hits the back stanchion of the net. It was an unbelievable score in incredible pressure situation, and just the fact of the timing as well, like 75 minutes on the clock. I think the lads covered it well yesterday. The running he would have put into the game, and to be able to do that at that stage of the game it was unbelievable. Because
even we just played a montage which included the Radio Kerry commentary, and there was a fair degree of tactical fouling high up the pitch by both sides. You know, they were stopping each other develop attacks from deep, and on the Radio Kerry coverage they're bemoaning the fact that Dublin have been smart enough to foul Clifford far enough out the pitch to prevent the kick at goal. So even at first glance they thought, well, this isn't kickable.
Yeah, and even from Dean Rock's free, I was watching out to see, are Dublin going to be holding Kerry here? We've been really cynical on the Kerry kick out, but they're not, and they get it off. Shane Ryan takes a risky enough kick probably to bring over Lee at the top of the D, and they managed to work its way up the pitch. But I think when Clifford wins it, Davy Byrne has it in his head, he has to foul him here, he can't let him turn and go at him, and that's what he did. But I'd say at that time, if you're Davy Byrne, you're probably thinking this is a good place to foul the ball, but as it turned out, it wasn't, unfortunately for him.
Yeah. It really was an extraordinary moment, and then of course there's no time, and it's so rare you get something so dramatic at the end of a match like that. Like, it's notable you mentioned the build-up, the Ubugluk kick, and even the kick into Clifford. It's a really brave kick, you know. I mean, that's a risky one, and it has to be pinpoint, and it bounces lovely into him. Like, in a sense, you'd have to say, despite only scoring 2 from play, I think, in the last 34 minutes, in that passage, Kerry went out and won it as opposed to Dublin losing it.
Yeah, they won it because they went for it. And you hit the nail on the head there. Paul Murphy, so many players in that situation wouldn't have played that ball, because it is a risky pass. And especially if Davy Byrne did get the hand in there and knocks it away, you're setting Dublin off on a counter-attack up the pitch, and they get a score and they win the game. So the margins were literally that fine. But sometimes the risk-reward, if you take the risk, the reward is there, and it was certainly there for Paul Murphy. Like, Paul Murphy's a brilliant footballer. And he's a brilliant footballer. So he had the confidence to take it on. It wasn't a difficult one, but under them circumstances, every pass is difficult, and he took the risk and got the reward from what happened afterwards.
Carried the better team for you overall, Colm?
I think just slightly, Joe. Yeah, it was a strange kind of game. Like, it was a brilliant game, don't get me wrong, but it really started at 100 miles an hour. It was up and down the pitch. It was electric for the first 25 minutes probably, and then the black card come, and it kind of changes how both teams are nearly playing. Dublin obviously are trying to wind down the clock, and they're playing a lot of keep ball possession, and I think at one stage they hold the ball for nearly 3 minutes or so, and it just kind of killed the flow of the game, and it killed the momentum. And I think actually Lee Gann gets turned over, and Kerry come down and get the penalty from that. And then obviously there's a couple more minutes of what happened there between before the penalty and after with Evan Comerford. So it kind of killed the flow of the game, and I would say even the first 10 or 15 minutes as its second half, it hit the game, definitely hit a bit of a lull. But then after that, like, you're thinking at that stage, Kerry are 6 up, you're thinking they're going to, sail off into the sunset here and win this by maybe 7.
I tell you what, your line is just misbehaving a touch. We'll take a very short break. We'll get it sorted and we'll pick up the conversation. Seeing we just started, we might as well sort it out now. So Colm Boyle, back with us in just 1 second.
Gaelic football on Off the Ball.
With AIB, proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship. Check out #TheToughest for more.
Gaelic football on Off the Ball.
With AIB, proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship. Check out #TheToughest for more.
Now you're very welcome back. So Colm Boyle, 4-time All-Star player with Mayo, is with us on the line. You're there, Colm?
Yeah, I'm back again, Joe.
Perfect, good stuff. So we were just in the midst of trying to make sense of the crazy game. You were saying on balance, Kerry deserved the win. There was that odd period that you mentioned whereby Kerry didn't have a wide for the first 18 minutes and were in cruise control, and then neither team scored from the 23rd minute until Clifford scored in the 40th. There was a few minutes added on just before the break. So Kerry went 17 minutes without a score, and then Dublin didn't score for 25 minutes in this game, which was extraordinary as well. I would say at half time, I'd be curious to know what you were thinking. Most of us were worried it was going to be damn squib. I don't know how confident you were based on the first half that the Dubs were going to come back.
I wasn't confident at all, Joe, to be honest with you, just on the way Kerry were playing. Obviously, when you're not fully at the game, you don't know the strength of that breeze. The most obvious thing to me was that Dublin weren't really taking shots on from around the D area like they would have. So it was telling me that strong was probably, that wind was a lot stronger than it looked. And that showed with even a couple of Clifford's efforts at the start of the second half. He was pulling them, the wind was taking them. So it obviously was a stronger wind than we thought. But I wasn't confident. I just think Dublin looked like Kerry looked like they'd so much more than Dublin, especially in attack. And to be honest, I thought Kerry might go the opposite way, that it might just pull away from them. And even at the start of the second half, Clifford plays a ball into Stephen O'Brien, who's in acres of space. And you're thinking if he just pulls in that ball rather than trying to, if he just side puts it in rather than trying to pick it up, then the game could have been over really at the start of the second half. So there was a couple of moments, that and the penalty, that probably kept Dublin in it. But at the same time, you'd give them huge credit at the response. It was probably kick-started by that Costello goal, I suppose.
Well, that was an extraordinary goal.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. And I just watched it back earlier on. Like when David Moore turns over the ball, it's 5 hand passes, work the ball up to Costello. Only one player takes a play. Hand pass, Costello, bang, back to the net. It was a sensational goal from Dublin. It's a goal when Costello receives the ball, that goal is not on. You know, it was incredible even to go for it. I suppose the fact that they weren't playing well, they were probably in desperate need of something to kick-start them, and that definitely did. There's no doubt about it.
Colin, what was your read in the first half? You mentioned Dublin had a few wides, or else were reluctant to shoot on account of the wind. There was Howard kind of skewed one outside of his boot wide uncharacteristically, and Costello with a wide, and there were some turnovers as well, like Gannon in the build-up to the penalty that O'Shea missed was turned over quite badly. That period for much of the first half where Dublin had a lot of possession, 45 metres, 50 metres, 55 metres, in the main weren't kicking ball inside to their full forward line, weren't too keen to shoot. It all looked very stagnant and like very hard work. So presumably Kerry are doing a lot right there in defence, but your read on what was going wrong for Dublin too, maybe?
Yeah, they were. Like, there was a couple of things in that. Like, we've mentioned the wind already, so they didn't want to be kicking the ball in against it. But Kerry generally were set up. If Ty Morley wasn't there, the sweeper, it was probably Jeremy O'Connor getting back in there, or it was David Moore, and they were just covering off that space around the D area where Dublin tend to get most of their shots from. The big thing from it then on the counter-attack, Kerry were looking to get that ball in straight away, and David Moore in particular, the goal is obviously a great example. They didn't want to give the likes of Johnny Cooper or James McCarthy chances to get back in and sweep in front of that full back line. So they were getting the ball in as quick as they could, and they were hurting Dublin really on the counter-attack. It's with the spaces that was there, particularly for obviously O'Shea and the two Cliffords in particular, and that kind of 15-minute spell there just kind of before the back or during the black card really did a lot of damage for Kerry.
We were just chatting there before you came on about Clifford versus Mick Fitzsimons. That was a hell of a tussle. Yeah. It was looking ominous early on for Fitzsimons.
It was, but even a couple of scores that Clifford got in that first half, like if you look at it, a lot of time, or a couple of them, I think Merchant was on, I think a few Lee Gannon might have been actually on him. So it was a case that maybe Fitzsimons was getting caught marking someone else. So I wouldn't put him fully on the 4 points that Fitzsimons got. But he was sensational in the second half, I thought, Mick Fitzsimons. I thought he was getting hands in, just knocking the ball away from Clifford. If you are Kerry going into the final, you would be a small bit worried about how little training he's done. Obviously, Jack O'Connor said it in the aftermath of the game. Like, he definitely isn't operating at 100%, as brilliant as he was. There was a drop off against Mayo too in the second half, probably because of the lack of training he's physically able to do. So that would be one slight worry for Kerry going into the final. But full credit for Simons, as you already said, 33 years of age, and he just gave it absolutely everything in the second half, and it was a titanic battle between the two of them.
Yeah. So I presume, and look with your defenders hat on, if you're Fitzsimons, that's your primary thought, I would think. Get a hand in, just do anything you can to stop Clifford getting primary possession, because once that tends to happen, the result is fairly inevitable, it seems.
Oh yeah, if you're getting a hand in, you're absolutely delighted just to knock the ball away from. And I suppose the thing is about Fitzsimons too, he's kind of cushioning Johnny Cooper, had been taken off on about 40-45 minutes. I think they moved Brian Howard back to 6, so he didn't really have a man playing in front of him. So there was an awful lot of one-on-one defending back there for Dublin in that second half. And you have to say, to do as well as he did, like I heard you mention, to keep him to 4 points for any defender is nearly a good day out. It was nearly the same for Oisin Mullins in the quarter-final. To keep him to 1-2 was nearly a good day. And that is the level of an operator we're talking about here.
Yeah, it's frightening. All right. So, and you know, on Clifford, I mean, you'd have such a good sense of where cutting edge S&C is. He hasn't done much training. We don't know exactly the nature of the injury or how little training he's done. To what extent does a high intensity game bring you on versus, I don't know, 10 training sessions? Like, you know, the way in pre-season players will often talk about, oh, well, you know, you can train all you want, you just need 2 or 3 games to get up to speed. So can Clifford almost short circuit the lack of training with these, you know, the Mayo game and now this game, or do you just get found out a little bit if you haven't got the base done?
Yeah, look at the base is important. There's no doubt about that, Joe. But look at it, he's surviving the games, he's getting through the games, which is the big thing. I would guess that he did very little in the 2 weeks in the lead up to between the Mayo game and the Dublin game, and watching what he might have been doing in training where the lads are training. He might have been doing maybe a lot of straight line running on his own and avoiding twisting and turning on the injury he has, you know. And again, that's get you to a certain level, but it's not going to have you at 100% for 70 plus minutes, you know. And I think that's what we saw the last day. But there's no doubt about it, even a David Clifford operating at 70%, as we saw yesterday, is still absolutely lethal and definitely can be a match winner in the final against Galway.
Aside from just, I suppose, the simple answer, which is that Dublin are still a very good team and games can go this way, why did it swing so much in Dublin's favour after the Costello goal?
From experience from playing against Dublin, when they get momentum behind them, and the crowd and the Hill 16, and I know it sounds very simple, but it's very hard to break that momentum again. And the stadium literally feels like it's in on top of you and everything's going against you. And I think Kerry just went through a period of that, and everything for Dublin is flowing. They're attacking their kickouts. Like McCarthy kicks a score from out on the right, and straight away he's up breaking the next kickout, smashing it back in, and Kilkenny gets a score. And the crowd is up, and just the whole momentum, and it's trying to really break that momentum. That is the key thing. And in fairness to Kerry, they did with O'Shea's score, but it's a difficult one to try and explain unless you're really in it. But it's incredible because they respond to that, they feed off that, and like I said, the sooner you can stop that momentum, the better for you, obviously.
In your time, did Mayo have tricks to try and break the momentum when it felt like the stadium was in on top of you?
We didn't. Look, we often spoke about trying to slow down the game as much as we can. We just really concentrate on maybe trying to set plays from kickouts, you know what I mean? Because so many times they'd have you squeezed in your half and you kick out. Like 2019 is a perfect example. When they squeezed us semi-final, they scored 2-6 in the first 12 minutes of the second half because we literally couldn't get off the pitch, couldn't get up the pitch. We couldn't win our own kick-out. Yeah. And the kick-outs that we practiced and that we tried and that we talked about just weren't coming off for them because the momentum, for us, because the momentum they gained. But that was literally all we were trying to do, just trying to win our kickouts and get the ball up the pitch away from our goal and maybe build a score to take the heat out of the game. Yeah,
so it's more complicated than just someone go down injured, presumably.
Yeah, because a lot of the look at the way it is now, obviously with head injuries and whatnot, it's a bit more difficult to stop it. But like I said to you, when that flow is going against you, it can be very difficult.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, it was quite striking. It was a lot of the old guard, wasn't it, who stood up for Dublin. It was Kilkenny equalising point and just driving them on. It was Fenton. It was McCarthy with that outrageous point you mentioned, and then just his all-round performance. Fitzsimons. It's to their credit. It's a testament to their perseverance, I suppose, in many ways. The other side of the coin is it's probably a slight reality check and worry for Dublin that they haven't had that emerging star, Conor Callan aside, who is stepping up at this stage.
Yeah, and like you were mentioning James McCarthy there, we talked about Clifford and the lack of training he had coming into the game. Like how much training James McCarthy realistically? Probably limited enough. He's picked up a lot of injuries through the year, even through the league and into championship. So for him to put a performance into that, especially so late in the game, in the last 15, 20 minutes, when the game is really slipping away from Dublin, even to have the hunger and the will to do it, for a man that's won so much as he has, was sensational. And Kilkenny, like you mentioned there as well, he was incredible in that period. But it would be a slight worry for Dublin because, even with the bench, even with the boys that came in and started, the likes of Lee Gannon started well, but I thought he had a really iffy game after that. Lorcan Adele, didn't really contribute. And, the older guards that you're talking about, if they're not there next year, if James McCarthy and Mick Fitzsimons, Dean Rock possibly, Johnny Cooper, if they say they're done now, they are 4 colossal players to lose for Dublin going forward. I'm not trying to retire them or anything like that, but in the next year or two, realistically, these boys are going to finish. And you're looking at what's coming behind you, and it's definitely not the same caliber player. There's no doubt about it. But if you're Dessie Farrell or you Dublin manager coming in, you'd be definitely trying to on the phone to Jack McCaffrey, and I think Paul Mannion has made it fairly clear that he's not coming back. But would be slight concerns if I was a Dublin fan in that regard. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, it does feel like two teams going in opposite directions, maybe. On Kilkenny, right? And this is nitpicking, and this is almost making a point of noting just how awesome he was in that period where Dublin really wrestled back control of the game. There's times where you want him to be... there's times where I want him to be a bit more adventurous in the first half. I mean, he's brilliant at recycling possession and he keeps them ticking over. But it's almost like when Kilkenny feels we need to go for it here, this game's in the melting pot, and he goes into overdrive and he takes on shots and he goes by a man and he sort of forces the issue. There's times then I look at him in the first half and I think, well, actually, you should force the issue a bit more here as opposed to being this metronomic playmaker type. Is that a fair question to ask?
Yeah, and to be honest, I think he is. A couple of years ago, he went through a really spell of just being that playmaker. He wasn't taking any risks really. He was just always recycling the ball. He was coming as a receiver. Look, I think for Kilkenny, I think he really misses Carl O'Callaghan. I think if them two boys are together, they just feed off each other. And like you said, it would have been nice to see him taking a few more risks in the first half. But look, sometimes it's just not happening for a player on any given day. But the second half, he was just absolutely sensational. But if Dublin had got a 70-minute performance out of Kilkenny like that, probably would have been enough to turn the game for them. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. So what would you make then of Kerry when they were in the melting pot, when they were in that kind of white heat of championship, in the furnace, contemplating, my God, we're going to lose this again, which must have crossed their minds, it's getting away from us again. These were the question marks we had over Kerry since the Tyrone game. How do you think they handled that really tough 15-minute spell? And I'm asking this, I suppose, with Galway in mind.
I think they mixed the good and the bad, to be honest with you. I think, they responded generally well to the goal. I think they went back 3 up in front again. I think Paddy Clifford puts them up 3 in front. But that next 10-minute period, once McCarthy hits that score, they did look nervy. There's no doubt about it. They did look nervy, and they were doing making some errors that you wouldn't typically see Kerry do, and it just looked like they couldn't get Clifford on the ball. They couldn't get Sean O'Shea on the ball. They couldn't get Paddy Clifford on the ball. And it was worrying. Dublin did seem to have them pinned in their own half. And like I said, they were giving away turnovers you wouldn't associate with them. So if you're Pádraig Joyce and Cian O'Neill, you just got to be thinking, stay in this game as much as possible and bring it to the last 15, 20 minutes, because I know it sounds very easy. But Kerry did look nervy in that second half. And I know the Dublin factor is obviously a big thing. They haven't beaten them since 2009. But a lot of them boys haven't won the All-Ireland too. So in the final, with 15 minutes to go, if you're thereabouts, that same nerves and that same age or whatever it is might be there for them again. So that if you're Pádraig Joyce and Cian O'Neill, that's where you're trying to get this game to.
Well, there is a weight on Kerry that isn't on most teams.
Huge. Yeah, huge. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And you could only imagine the response if Kerry had lost that game yesterday from the position they were in. Like, them boys would have come in for some serious heat. There's no doubt about it. So the sense of relief they will get that from is huge. The sense of confidence they will get from that, no doubt, is huge. But I'd say if you're Jack O'Connor, I'd say after the game, he'd probably be pointing out an awful lot of the things that they've done wrong rather than what they've done right, because they want to fix them for the final, because that same pressure is going to be there in the final. Everyone's going to expect them to win this. So that brings an extra pressure now, kind of different pressure than what they had the last day, I would say. So, that pressure will be there. So that's what I'm saying for Pádraig Joyce and Cian O'Neill. You make sure your team is in that game with 20 minutes to go to bring that pressure to them.
Yeah, because, if you'd said to Jack O'Connor pre-game, you're going to score 2 points from play in the last 35 minutes and still win the game.
Yeah,
he'd
unbelievable.
Be pretty surprised.
Yeah, unbelievable with the forward line he has, with the bench he has. Like normally you can put Killian Spillane down for 2 points when he comes off the bench. He had an off day. In fairness, Darren Moynihan comes on and kicks the score. But Sean O'Shea had a quieter second half, even though he wins that free before the free he kicks to put them one up in injury time. He came to the fore obviously when he was needed, but he did have a quieter second half. There's no doubt about it. So when you look at it, might be a good way for Kerry to win it if they gone on maybe and won that game by 7, 8, 9 points and not maybe got that serious test. Maybe they might have been less battle hardened now for the final. Now they know they can do it. That mental strength probably is in them now. It's just a matter of doing it now again in the final, especially if Galway bring them to the tough moments.
Yeah, we'll preview that with you in just a second. One last point on Dublin, I suppose. Malky Clerkin had an amazing stat in the Irish Times today, and he was, well, you will know this all too well. It's that, like, during this period of Dublin quote-unquote dominance, they were often taken to the wire and to, like, the final minutes of a game, and invariably they seemed to come out on top. So Malky Clerkin was saying that Jim Gavin managed Dublin for 107 games, league and championship, and so of those 107, 33 of them ended with a margin of just 3 points or less either way. So 33 Dublin games, they won by 3 points or less, and of those 33, Dublin only lost 9 of them. So 33 times they're down to the wire, and only 9 times do they not come out on top. Whereas it has flipped a bit under Farrell. This was Dublin's under Farrell 9th game decided by a goal or less, and they've only won 1 of those 9. So I know I've thrown a lot of numbers there, but 9 times under Farrell down to the wire, and they've only come out on top once. So there is something. You would have glimpsed all too closely a Dublin side who had an ability to, as a group, think clearly with composure and somehow come out on top, whereas that seems to have ebbed away a touch. People have pointed to the Scully shot, for instance, which skewed off his boot. So something maybe has been lost there a touch, Colm.
Yeah, there's no, like, that Scully shot, that flashed into my mind as he took it on. That shot wouldn't have happened 5 years ago, I don't think. He would have been holding that ball and recycling and getting a shot away, getting it to Dean Rock on the edge of the D or something like that. They were making mistakes, like Sean McMahon gets carried out, solos the ball out over the sideline, and all these vital errors in the last couple of minutes were really un-Dublin-like in the last couple of minutes. But I suppose you have to expect that they couldn't keep at that same level they couldn't keep going on doing what they were doing and dominating. So it is to be expected that they were going to come back. I'd say an awful lot of the games, in 33 games that you referred to, I would say certainly in the games we played against them, we were nearly the ones chasing them down the home straight. They were almost always a couple of points up, and we were trying to get back at them. I think maybe the 17 final might be the only one where we got in front with Lee's goal with 10 minutes to go, and they clawed us back. But an awful lot of the games, we would have clawed them back, and it was just in the last couple of minutes where they had that bit extra energy or that extra belief or know-how or what it was to get them over the line. But certainly that doesn't seem to be there at the minute, but the quality probably isn't quite as it was either. You gotta, and obviously the bench as well.
Yeah, I mean, the umbrella issue for all of these questions is they're just not what they were. They've lost too many players.
I think that's the simple fact.
Yeah, you could boil it down to just that simple point. Because even the man in possession with the arm in the air to his teammates, like, that's disappeared largely. What did that mean? In I'm sure you looked at the tape. Did they get into a certain formation then, or was it just? I half wondered if it was just psychological to show the opposition just how in control they felt they were.
Yeah, it's hard to tell when you're not physically at the game, but it just looked like Cooper's usually the man that starts it, and everyone else seems to go high up the pitch then. So they bring the Kerry defenders with them. So the Dublin forwards just seem to go forward and bring the Kerry forwards with them. And they end up being able to play the ball around at the back an awful lot by creating an extra player around there. And they'll move it very slowly, very, very slowly up the pitch. But I mentioned earlier on, Cooper tries that around the black card time. And you mentioned it, Lee Gannon actually gets turned over about 3 minutes into that a couple of years ago. That move probably finishes in a score. I think that's the difference now with the quality. Instead of Philip McMahon coming onto that ball and probably kicking over the bar, slicing it over the bar from the top to the D, it's Lee Gannon who doesn't have the same skill set. He's getting turned over, carry down the pitch, get a penalty.
Galway 2-8, Derry 1-6. Start of the year, where did you think? I presume you didn't suspect Galway would be in an All-Ireland final.
I didn't, Joe, but I did expect them to be better. At the minute I heard Cian O'Neill was coming in there, I knew they were going to be a better team. I knew they'd be far more organised, far more professional, and they would give it to any of the big day teams on their day. Did I think they get to a final? Probably not. I thought maybe they might develop on in year 2 if Keane stayed on there for year 2 or maybe year 3. But the fact they're there now, and people say they got the easier route. You get your luck by winning games, and that's exactly what they did. They bet Mayo in the first round, and things opened up from there. And look, they still had to come through a titanic battle with Armagh in the quarter-final. But they're fully there on merit, there's no doubt about it.
You were at the game, weren't you?
Which one?
Galway, Derry.
Galway, Derry, no, I wasn't. I was at the Armagh game, all right.
Sorry, yes, I knew you were there for one of them, yeah. Okay, so you're watching the box like the rest of us. 3-0 down at one point. I mean, it's a curious game to analyse. At 3-0 down, I was almost thinking, God, Galway might panic here, you know, which is a strange thing to say. They didn't. What did you make of that first 40 in particular?
Yeah, I heard you talking about it before I come on there. It was a tough watch. It was really tough. You're trying to watch out for what's happening. Galway definitely looked like they were very tentative. It almost looked like they'd overthought things about Derry, about how to play against them. And they were playing them a lot at their own game. So even when they attacked, they were very, very slow with the ball. They were just allowing Derry to get back the pitch, and they were taking very few risks on that. Derry was, I think after about 25 minutes, the penny finally dropped with Galway. We've nothing to fear here against the boys. I think we just need to release a small bit more and go at them. And there was a couple of moments. Comer scores. I think when Galway get through that 25 minutes at 3-1 down, it was actually a brilliant scoreline for them, because I think they could physically see this is what Derry have to throw at us. They're not able to score freely. If we can get the ball down to other into our forwards, they will eventually score for us. And I think we saw that in Comer, certainly for Galway. Yeah.
When you say that about Derry, though, I mean, the evidence of the Clare game would suggest Derry can score freely, and we saw Derry score at times, obviously not in every game, but certainly in several games in Ulster where they have colossal running power. So was it that Galway said, well, let's just feel our way into this match-up, don't allow them run at us the way they did at Clare, and is it like incrementally almost they loosen the handbrake as the game goes on?
Yeah, I think there was a couple of things in it. Well, if you look at Nguigan, part of their scoring chief, he was well held. So you normally expect him to be getting on the scoreboard early. Yeah. But it was Brendan Rodgers kicking the 2 points. Obviously, that wasn't sustainable as the game went on. I think he kicked the first two out of the first 3. So that wasn't sustainable as the game went on, especially when Comer was pinning him back in his own half after that. But I think it was that period when they were 3-0 up and they didn't score then for maybe 15 minutes or so. I think that rocked Derry a small bit, because I think they would have felt, especially when Galway eventually got on the scoreboard, Derry probably felt we should be 5 or 6 up here. Then Comer really to get a score from John Daly and Comer again. It's funny, I was going to say the VAR, but the Hawkeye decision, I think that actually nearly worked in Galway's favour, because Derry going at half-time, they think they're 4-3 up after a really, really tight game. And you're coming out for the throw-in, and just small psychological things. Galway are going in for the throw-in, and it's been announced that they're actually 4-4, and the crowd is up. Galway get up, win the throw-in, hold the ball for about 90 seconds, and win a free in that Walsh puts over the bar. And all of a sudden, Galway going from a game where they weren't really in the first, and not that they weren't really in, but they conceded a huge amount of possession. All of a sudden they're in front, and the handbrake almost comes off then, and the belief is there, and they win another free with McGuinness. Well, I actually thought it was a free out, but they gave the free against McGuinness, and 6-4 Comer then gets the goal, and really after that it was game over.
Yeah, it was. The Hawkeye decision, obviously, was bizarre when it happened, and like the shock when you see the replay and you're like, oh my God, it's so far inside the post. To their credit, that was a tricky situation. It's pretty much unprecedented in so much as I can think of, to reverse a decision which has happened in the first half. Like, there's very few things you can reverse. Would have been very easy to panic or to sit on hands or to just, almost be paralysed by the situation. They did the right, it was the common sense right thing to do. And I think even, when it was mentioned to Rory Gallagher when he came back out, he nodded as if to say, look, I get it. And a bad situation, really well handled actually in tricky circumstances, because I don't even know if you're allowed to do that. I don't know what it says in the rule book. We're allowed just actually give you the point because we've realised Hawkeye was wrong, but I was really glad it happened because it would have hung over the whole second half.
Yeah, I was actually surprised by Rory's Gallagher response to that. I didn't expect him to take it as well as he did. But yeah, I think a couple of things in it, the fact that I was so close to half time really helped. Like that, if that had happened midway through the first half, probably very unlikely that they would have come back to it at half time. Maybe they would, I'm not sure. Yeah. Derry fans listening might be saying about Connor's last point in the first half as well, that there's a few where that was actually over the bar as well, and that should have been looked at. So I suppose we have to mention that as well. I'm not 100% sure if it was. I saw one camera angle and it did look like it had snuck inside the post, but it's something certainly that's going to need to be looked at. There's no doubt about it. But I think the way it actually worked out for Galway, I think it was actually better than getting the score at the time.
Colm, your thoughts on this period in the second half whereby Lynch, the Derry goalkeeper, was routinely coming up and joining the play, and then a turnover would happen and the crowd would get quite excited, and generally Galway struggled to work the ball up quickly enough, and then eventually it seemed like the inevitable happened. And by the way, what a finish by Comer. I mean, I think most players would roll that one in, whereas he blasted it in from 30 yards, no bounce. But Lynch and the fly goalkeeper and the way Derry did it, your read on that period in the game?
Yeah, it was an interesting one because I think the camera actually went on, I think after Comer's goal, Gallagher, tried to throw caution in the wind, and he's trying to create an extra player by bringing Lynch out. I think he goes over to him a couple of stages to get him to drive up the pitch. It was interesting. Look, he didn't look comfortable doing it. I think that's number one. He did look like, if you're Galway and you're seeing him coming up the pitch, you're probably happy enough, because it's not an Ethan Rafferty, as someone that's going to do an eye the needle pass, like he was doing in the quarter-final, So I think we were happy enough, and it was very interesting actually Comer's position, and he was actually, Lynch had got down the pitch. If you see the camera from behind the goal, Comer is actually right in the square when that ball is turned over. He's about 20 yards behind Brendan Rodgers. He actually ends up winning it out in front of him. But it was there was a bit of desperation about it from Derry. They weren't getting free, they weren't getting runners from McGinless and Glass. Galway completely negated that. So it was trying something different, but it just looked like it wasn't going to happen. It looked like it was desperate, and it definitely looked like Lynch wasn't comfortable doing it. You see the value of a goalkeeper coming out in various instances, not least when they're adding a bit of impetus to an attack and there's a bit of pace to a break, and they're an overlap and they keep a thing moving and keep a sense of flow about a move. But actually, where Lynch was coming out, and this is more on Gallagher as opposed to Lynch, or it's a policy. He wasn't just doing it of his own accord, I'm sure. But Lynch was just joining a fairly stagnant attack, and he's just getting in the way. He's just an extra body. He's offering no value. It's all downside. Yeah, look, that's the reality of it. It's not like he was breaking a line. He wasn't offering pace to attack. I just wonder would they be further off if they moved Conor Glass into full forward and literally just tried long diagonals or something like that, something small bit different to get even Galway back closer to their own goal, where it might free up the D area a small bit more, where Galway will protect them fairly well. But like I said, the whole Lynch thing, it was a bit desperate. It didn't add anything to their play. I think it actually made the Derry players a bit nervous as well, when they were with the ball, because they didn't look comfortable, and obviously they paid the price for it. But you can't not mention a what a finish by Comer. It was sensational. He drilled it into the top corner from whatever he was, 35 yards out. I wasn't sure if he was going to go for it or take the easy option for the point, but fair play to him, he did, and it was a super finish.
Yeah, sure was. So Galway against Kerry then. What kind of game is this going to be? We probably have a stronger sense of how Kerry will line up. Will Galway go uber defensive here?
Yeah, well, Kerry, what you see is what you get. They're not going to change now. They'll play the same way and try and hold Molloy as the sweeper and as their +1 in front of the full back line. I think Galway will be fairly defensive. Yeah, they will. They will not play completely like Derry the last day, but they will be protecting that D area. I don't think they have the players to go to match up Kerry on a one-on-one basis when you consider the Kerry forward line that's there. So they'll need to protect them, and they'll need their wing backs especially coming in, protecting that D and avoiding them situations where David Moore is bombing in balls like he was the last day into a 2-on-2 or 3-on-3 inside, and you've Sean O'Shea and Clifford there in acres of space. So I think Galway will be good on that, and they will protect it. But Galway will be able to hurt Kerry themselves. Like, if you're looking at matchups, I know it's a bit early to talk about it, but Comer, you'd fancy Comer on Jason Foley if that's the way that lines up. Shane Walsh and Thomas Sullivan would be fascinating as well. But there are areas certainly that Galway can hurt Kerry. Whether there's enough, I don't know. Whether they'll be able to stop Kerry scoring enough, it's a big if. But if you're Pádraig Joyce and Cian O'Neill, you're almost in a perfect position here for an ambush. You know, all the talk about Kerry is going to be about Kerry for the next 2 weeks. There's going to be very little about your team. So it could be set up for them.
Yeah, because we had James Donoghue on in the immediate aftermath of full time yesterday, and he was like thrilled with the result, obviously. And then as soon as we turned to Galway, he was just really emphasising Kerry just have to park the elation of this. Like, it was such an extraordinary win, and it's against the Dubs, and in the O'Shea kick and the fashion of it, they just have to park this as quickly as possible. And he was saying it's not going to be easy to park it in some respects.
It's not, because even today, we're at Monday evening now. Them boys are still in a high after yesterday. It's only really going to be tomorrow or Wednesday before that kind of comes down and the focus will really go on Galway, you know. But look, I think Kerry have been longing for this opportunity for so long that it's very difficult to see them letting this slip. Now they're back in the final and they've a shot at the title against Galway, who they would fancy their chances against. There's no doubt about it. If they get their stuff right. And look, they probably have a couple of injury concerns about yesterday. Like Gavin White looks like very unlikely that he'll play if he's been carried off with a couple of minutes to go. So look, they will have concerns, there's no doubt about it, but your instinct would have to say they will have too much for Galway. But I go back to it again, Galway are in an absolute ideal situation going into this, because they will fancy their chances against that Kerry backline, I think, especially the full backline, if they can get enough ball into them.
Yeah. Just one last thought, by the way, on the weekend, particularly in Dublin Kerry, ironically, we saw a lot of, I would say, systematic fouling, and this is nothing new, but systematic fouling in the opposition's half as they're trying to build an attack. So you stop them early and generally you get away with it. It's like we see it in soccer all the time, like Man City ironically are major proponents of it. Like, there was a point in the match where, who was it turned around? Fenton was fouled on halfway, and he turned to the referee and he held up the 3. So that's 3, and it was a yellow card. And I was thinking to myself, if a black card is there to stop cynical fouling, yeah, Fenton wasn't dragged to the ground, but there is something systematically cynical about this. I don't want to be throwing out black cards for nothing, but like, it is a kind of cancer in the game, that. And I don't know if, you know, just a free and eventually a yellow after a bunch of them is enough of a deterrent.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I spotted that with Fenton, all right. It was Jim O'Connor. I don't know, was he trying to make it out? It was him that had done it 3 times, or there was 3 different players that were fouling him the whole time, which could actually be happening as well. It's a difficult one for the referee, because even Sean O'Shea, people saying he should have got at least a yellow card in the first half. He actually does a fairly tactical foul midway through the second half, and he gets a yellow card for it, you know, which we probably wouldn't have done if he'd picked the yellow card out in the first half. So there's no doubt about it, it does happen. It's a hard one to police for the ref. You know, it is very difficult. You know, the likes of a bear hug where they're just holding on to the player and not letting them run, you know, and you know you're going to give away that free kick. You know, it's very frustrating to watch. And you can see it actually did get to Fenton yesterday as well when he was playing, but I don't know what they're going to do about it, because it's a difficult one to police.
Yeah, especially if you're different players doing it. They're all, you know, everyone's clever enough. Anyway, fun weekend. Thank you so much for coming on, Colm Boyle. Appreciate it.
Thanks a million, lads.
Cheers. Colm Boyle with us there, giving us his thoughts on the weekend. And just to mention as well, on the GAA theme, the football pod will be live in Kilmacud Crokes Thursday night to start the build-up to the final. So Tommy, Paddy Andrews, James Donoghue there, and Michael Meehan is going to join them as well. The show is completely sold out, we're happy to say, but there are 2 tickets being given away. You just have to check out at the football pod _GAA on Twitter for details. And our GAA football coverage on Off the Ball is in partnership with AIB, proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship. Check out #TheToughest for more.
Gaelic football on Off the Ball.
With AIB, proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship. Check out #TheToughest for more.